Hi students, Mrs. Jarvis here. Today we're going to talk about finding the distance between points that share an x or a y coordinate. Okay, now first of all, let's talk about the rules. The rules are that if the 2 points are in the same quadrant, you're going to subtract. If the 2 points are in different quadrants, you're going to add. Now, I remind my students to kind of remember this by same, subtract. So if it's the same quadrant, you're going to subtract. Different quadrant, different is add. Okay, maybe that will help us to remember. Let's go ahead and work through the first problem. I'm going to try to find the distance between A and B. Now, if I go ahead and graph A, I know that I'm over 3 and up 2. Here's A. And B is back 4 and up 2. Okay? As you can see, I do share a y coordinate, which is why I can go ahead and find the distance between these two. Okay? Now, yes, I could count because I'm provided a graph. However, if I didn't count, how would I do it? Thinking about my rules. Now, let's see. Since they're in different quadrants, I'm going to be adding. What will I be adding? Well, I'm not going to add the 2's. Those are the shared coordinates. You don't add or subtract the shared coordinates. You add or subtract the ones that are different. In this case, that's going to be the x values. And since they're different quadrants, I'm adding. Now, for distance, as you may recall, we can't have a negative distance. So when we're finding distances, you're going to put them in absolute values. So let's go ahead and add the absolute value of 3 plus the absolute value of -4. And that solution is going to give me 7. Now, because this is a distance, my answer is 7 units. Not units squared because it's not an area. Now, let's bunny hop and check and see if that's correct. Bunny hop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we are correct. Now, let's try the second one, M and N. Okay, since I am provided a graph, I could count, but let's try it using our rules. M is located at -2, -4. And N is located at -2, -1. They are in the same quadrant. So instead of adding them, same means I'm going to subtract. So the shared coordinate, or the coordinate that's the same, is my x value. That means I'm going to be subtracting these two. Okay, once again, distance is always an absolute value. So the absolute value of -4 minus the absolute value of -1. Same thing as 4 minus 1, which gives me 3. So 3 units should be my distance. Let's check it and make sure. Bunny hop 1, bunny hop 2, bunny hop 3. That's correct. Okay, now here's a great example of when you're not given an actual graph that's large enough to use your bunny hops. This is an example of when you'll actually need to remember these rules. If I need to find the distance between Q and R, I need to visualize where Q would be located. I'm going to start by looking at my coordinate plane. I know everything in quadrant 1 is going to be positive, positive. Everything in quadrant 2 is going to be negative positive. Everything in quadrant 3 is going to be negative negative. And everything in quadrant 4 is going to be positive negative. So if I'm looking at these two coordinates, I have a positive positive and a positive positive. These must both be in quadrant 1. If they're in the same quadrant, that means I will subtract. Okay, these are the similar coordinates, so they're not the ones I'm going to use. I use the ones that are different, 50 and 20. Okay, let's subtract. 50 minus 20 gives me 30. So my answer is 30 units. The distance between Q and R is 30 units. Okay, and finally, let's go ahead and try Y and Z. Y is negative negative, which puts it in quadrant 3. Z is positive negative, which puts it in quadrant 4. They're in different quadrants, which means I will add. Okay, so will I use the negative 30 or the x values? Not the negative 30 because that's the shared coordinate. Instead, I'm going to use the 90 and the 40. Remember, distance is always in absolute values. Okay, so positive 90 plus a positive 40 gives me positive 130 units apart. All right, students, I hope that this has been helpful today. If you have any additional questions, please ask your teacher. Don't ever give up.